did.
Okay, and to reverse that whole procedure, while recording, you press fader. And then when you hit the start-stop, it'll go. Now you hit the fader, now you hit start-stop and it should fade me out of the picture. Now what's the button underneath there? Macro.
Yeah.
Remember it? You have to do it each time?
Yep.
Okay, well push.
Fading in.
There's a red light on the front of the camera that indicates record, by the way, too. So I don't have to keep asking the stupid questions anymore. Okay, you want to
if I hit fader again, then I hit stop. Now it fades out.
Good morning and welcome to Millie Atoll. My name's Matt Hawley, and for the next hour we're going to show you around primarily all the Japanese relics that are all over this goddamn place. I don't like it already. Cut! Try again. Just leave it and let's just keep fade out. Go to the next one. I didn't know what I was going to say after that. I had my intro done and I was lost. God damn. It goes this way for a while. Believe me. Good morning and welcome to Millie Atoll. My name is Matt Hawley, and for the next hour we're going to show you around the various historical and tourism sites on Millie Atoll. We're going to start, since it's convenient, with this remains of a Japanese Betty bomber to my left. This plane used to be sitting in this general area and was hammered by an aerial attack, which blew the plane all over the place. In this case, you can see the landing gear up at the sky, the engine down below, and various pieces of the plane all over the place. The plane has a identifying number that we can see of 5854. We don't know if that's the plane number, but at least there's something visible to identify it. The cockpit section is about 100 feet away. Most of the fuselage is gone or probably burned up. Some of the remains are in the bomb hole. And in a few seconds here, we'll swing over to the tail section and show you what remains of the tail. Behind me, about 50 yards behind me, is the main runway for the airport. This is the A runway. It basically runs east and west and was almost a mile in length. That was the main fighter airstrip for Millie. Let's swing over that way and take a look at the tail section. Good morning and welcome to Ada. Yeah, 4. Yeah, once it gets rolling, it's easy. Yeah. Good morning and welcome to Millie Atoll. My name is Matt Hawley, and for the next hour, we're going to show you around to all the historical and tourism sites on this island. To start with, later on, we'll show you where the airplane lands, down on the main Japanese runway that used to be called Runway A, behind me here. But for a little bit of a starter, just immediately to my left, we have the remains of a Japanese Betty bomber. The plane was bombed from the air. As you notice, I'm standing at the edge of a bomb crater. And what we're looking at in this Betty bomber here is one of the engines here is hanging down underneath the wing. It used to be mounted up in this position here. And above that, you can see what's left of the landing gear. And from this picture, you can figure out that the plane's upside down. And the rest of this plane is scattered or burned all around the surrounding area. The nose is about 100 feet away in the jungle, and the tail sections to your right we'll show you in a moment. The plane has a number on one of the panels that says 5854. We don't know if that's just a part number or an identification number for the aircraft. Some of the parts in the past have been so broken up it's hard to tell what's a part number, what's a serial number. But there are various identifying features. Some of the planes still have painted tails, so you can tell some of the original squadron numbers. But throughout Millie, there's roughly about 20 aircraft scattered around the jungle. In this case, the tail is over to my right. It used to have a 20mm cannon sitting in it. There was a person back in that tail section that operated that gun. As you can see from the remains of the tail, it was pretty severely blown up. Now we're inside the east hangar. As you notice, most of it's collapsed, but the pictures we have from the wartime show that this was actually standing in 1946. So although all the roofing and the walls were knocked off it from the bombing, the structure was still intact, and it has collapsed just from its own weight and rust and the damage done to it. Let's see if we can find a bullet hole nearby here. The structure has numerous holes through it, from bullets and shrapnel. Yep, there's that one. Come up here in the foreground. We have one real clean, probably 50 caliber shell hole right through the webbing here. This structure used to be about 16 to 20 feet higher up in the sky. This was the top frame for the front of the hangar. The door sections rolled along on little rubber wheels, and we're just on a track assembly here. All of that's collapsed, and the doors are on the left and the right sides. Behind me here, inside the hangar, is the remains of a Zero. It looks like it was inside for some maintenance. The engine was off of it, and later on the hangar fell on it, but the Zero itself was burned very badly from the bombing. What we'll do now is we'll bring the camera inside the hangar and give you a little more closer shots on this airplane here and a few other items inside of the hangar. Okay, we're back inside the east hangar, looking at the Zero that was destroyed on the right-hand corner as you're looking at the hangar. If we look close here, we can see part of the landing gear cover door structure. We're underneath the front edge of what was left of the firewall of the engine here. The landing gear are still standing.
the plane was on its wheels. And as we come down here, underneath there's two straps that hang down. There was either a fuel or an oil tank that's strapped behind that bulkhead up underneath there. As we go down the wing edge, you have a vent that's been destroyed by something. And the landing gear. And one of my favorite parts of this airplane was this little flag that would come up telling the pilot that his gear was down. So this used to be yellow, or had a little yellow marker that was riveted to it, and he could look out of the cockpit over here and know that his gear was actually down. It was gear driven off of a little ring gear on the top of the landing gear. So when the gear went down, the flag went down. When the gear came, or when the gear went up, the flag. Now I've really screwed it up, haven't I? When the gear went up, the flag went down, and when the flag came up, forget that. Let's cut that out. Jesus, got destroyed on the flag, Bernie. Let's try it again.
Fade out.
We're back inside the east hangar, and we're looking at the Zero that's now crushed under the weight of the hangar structure. This Zero caught fire, obviously, from the raids. Most of the left side of the plane has been burned off, and the tail section, fuselage, has been burned off. But we can still see some of the parts of the plane. This was some of the landing gear cover doors. The landing gear is down at the moment. Also, when it's down, this little flag comes up here, shows the pilot that his wheels are down. This section here used to be where a 20mm cannon resided, and underneath was a round magazine that carried 100 rounds. Somebody's removed it. And as we go down the wing farther, get out here. As we go down the wing farther, you can see a section's been removed. We'll come over here and take a look at the what the wing looks like inside, and show you a couple other features. As you look at the exposed edge of this wing structure, it's been exposed, by the way, from somebody taking a chisel and chiseling off the end of the wing. The leading edge has round tubular framing, and the framing that's inside the main section is more of a box structure. Looks like a piece of channel with the edges rolled over to give it more strength. We're lucky on this wingtip. This wingtip we'll focus on here for a second. This is a folding wingtip. Right in here we have part of the hinge assembly so this wingtip could fold up. They did that so they could fit inside of the aircraft carrier bays and go up and down on the elevators. So most of the Japanese airplanes that were designed for carrier work either had detachable wings that could be bolted back on, or the wingtips would fold up within a little bit more of a 10 meter long elevator platform. On this folding wingtip section, we're going to come around here with the camera. You have to walk around over here, Bernie. There's a tag on the inside. It's difficult to read because it's been in the weather for so long. But there is a few numbers. The only number I see that's easy to read says 289 on the very bottom. So it would be difficult to determine if that correlates to anything with the serial number of the aircraft or is just a part number for this folding wingtip.
Fade out.
This is a Val dive bomber, also outside the east hangar. Behind it is a very, very big bomb hole. It looked like this plane was being worked on, and it was parked outside the hangar. The engine, actually a number of engines for the Val, are sitting inside of the hangar, and there is another Val dive bomber in the hangar in a very poor state. It looks like it burned and literally almost melted into the floor.
This plane is in fairly good shape. The wings are behind me. We'll take a look at those in a second. There's still a lot of the cockpit controls, a few instruments, part of the canopy, and some interesting features of this plane that make it more easier to figure out that it's a valve than other kinds of Japanese planes. As they have this bolt-on wing point. We have this control point here for the wing. And as you go down the plane, as we get to the tail, you can see this has been badly damaged over here. Part of the other side is gone, and there's another very large bomb hole behind me here in the jungle. So this plane was probably got a lot of fragmentation from shrapnel in it from these two fairly close bomb hits. But the rest of the plane is in fairly good shape, meaning you could probably stand it up again and make it look like an airplane, where some of the airplanes here are just a collection of pieces all in one spot. Why don't we go now? We'll go walk about 20 feet away and we can see where the wings were stored. And from the close bomb hit, the wings literally dropped into the crater after all was said and done. These are the two valve wings. This is the hinge point that allowed it to be bolted on. You can look down inside the structure of the wing actually here. It's more interesting to look at the one on the other side because it's easier to see some of the features. Through this big bomb crater, we have the other wing here. The other wing we have a dive brake. The one on this wing is missing. We have a couple mounts for bombs and assorted other access ports, connections, and so on. So they had to be reattached to the plane. A lot of time they could ship them that way, ship them by ship, unload them, put them together, and fly them. Also behind me here, you can see some of the concrete pieces for the edge of the hangar structure. And as you look off into the hangar, it's been completely covered with or in jungle. Back under all of that is another valve. There's 2 or 3 engine stands with various engines on them. There's assorted pieces of equipment that would be used to work on or maintain the planes, bomb carts, jacks, oxygen bottles, spare propellers, some small generators and pumps and things. So it's a fairly large area with a fairly big amount of sort of different a collection of items. I don't know if we can see it right here. Right through the jungle up here. Let's see if we can see this. No, it's pretty hard to see. But this metal piece here is one of the pontoons that used to be bolted onto one of their amphibious tanks. They landed 4 amphibious tanks on Millie. They had 2 of these structures. One went to the front of the tank, one went to the back of the tank. They lowered it in the water. They'd run to shore, come to shore, take them off, and they just happened to store them in here. We think that they used them possibly for water storage or something similar, or just simply stored them in the hangar out of the way.
Lay down.
Here we have a small bunker right in the middle of nowhere. We're absolutely about 200 yards in from the ocean, 300 yards behind the hangar. It's a cute little bunker. It hasn't been damaged at all. It's interesting because it's been completely grown over by the jungle. We have a full-size palm tree growing right out of the middle of it, and all kind of pandanus and even, not breadfruit. Yeah, we even have some back there growing on top of it. It has a small compartment, probably about, not very big, big enough for 3 or 4 guys to hide in. and a back door going out the other side that's sort of vetted with dirt on both sides. Some of these had a pedestal in the center that they could mount the machine gun on, but this might be what these structures are for. They might have 3 smaller machine guns that they could fire out of this pit. It's also interesting that nearby, behind me, we have the tail section of a Japanese bomb just laying here on the ground. Got 2 fins still rusty but on the ground and part of its structure. It was riveted on. Most of the American bombs had their sections screwed on with threads. So that's how we tell the difference between a Japanese and American bomb. But from here we'll head over to the beach and look at some of the big guns down on the ocean side.
Straight out.
Here we have one of the 6-inch naval guns on the west side of the atoll. They had 2 sections of 3 guns each. One section on the north side, one section on the south side of the west side of the island. This is the second battery, the second gun in the north battery. As you can see from the damage in front of me, and off to my right, we'll show you in a second, there was probably an aerial bomb dropped in this area, which tore up most of the base in the foreground, and most of the items off of the left side of the gun. The gun measures about 22 feet in total length, by the way. The barrel's depressed. Some people say that the barrel was depressed to show the gun wasn't in action anymore. In reality, I've seen most of the gun barrels were depressed so that when it rained here, the rain wouldn't go in the barrel. So it's really pretty simple. This barrel and most of the mechanism for it is still intact. You can see it's quite a beefy piece of steel, but it looks like some naval gunfire was landed here in the foreground, and there's a hole in the ground that's at least 12, 13 feet below the surrounding grade. And to the far left of the crater, there's what's left of the concrete bunker that supported this gun, probably for the guys to hide into or to store ammunition. And up on the far bank, towards the ocean, there's one of the ammo boxes that used to hold usually 6 shells. And it's all bent out of shape, it's empty. So you can see some of the destruction that happened in this area. Behind us, all around us, there's numerous major bomb or artillery holes in the ground. This entire area has been well disturbed. This is one of the small bunkers guarding the beach. As you can see, it's been very well blown up. This whole section, we think, actually started about 8 or 10 feet back in the jungle and has been blown up, and it landed on its top on the beach section here. So what's even more incredible, when you look at the war in the jungle on one side, we had this gorgeous day on the ocean side. So we're going to swing around and let you look at what the ocean side of Millie looks like. Right now we have an extreme low tide, so you really get to see everything. So we've got tide pools and all the reef exposed. This shore is on the lee side, so the diving on this side is very calm, generally very easy, and also very, very full of life. So later on we'll show another section of the beach. So besides looking at these relics, there's a lot of other things to see besides the war on Millie. We're on the reef plain on the west side of Millie now. And if you look behind me and down in the foreground, you can see some of the cement foundation pieces for the barbed wire that they ran around the ocean side on this west side. When they built the fences, they thought about defending from the beaches. That was the early Japanese philosophy of defense. Later on, they decided to defend farther inland in the jungles. But if you look behind me, there's a row, 3 deep, that had barbed wire on it. And the sections are also behind us and also around the corner. They continue. This is one of my favorite zillies.
Fade out.
Fuck. This is one of my favorite
Fade out again.
zeros. Zeros. What is the fucking problem? Yeah, fade out again and say when and all.
I got all that.
This is one of my favorite zeros on Millie Atoll. This guy we call the unhappy pilot Zero. And we'll show you here in a second. The Zero had two 7.7 guns up in the front of the plane. And they shot through the propeller. They were geared to the drivetrain so that the bullets would pass between the propeller blades. In this case though, this pilot had a problem, technically. And when he pulled the trigger on his guns, he started shooting up his own propeller. So this blade, it literally has only one went completely through, but he started the propeller blade. And I'm sure he turned off the guns very quickly. Also, if we swing up to this blade, you can see a little bit of a chip from your side of the camera there. This leading edge and the back side here also has gnaw wounds of at least 6 or 8 shots. Fortunately, it didn't break the blade, so he was able to probably land the plane in one piece. But it looks like it was parked here and then probably bombed, and part of the plane burned and it was retired. When we found the plane a long time ago, the engine was laying flat on the ground and you could see all the 3 blades easily. And it was stood up about 3 years ago, and it's stood here ever since. There was some kind of a tag or sticker on the propeller here a long time ago. You can see the mark where it was. It's no longer there. And even though this plane is pretty well beat up, there's a number of things that you can see. There's the magazines that fed the machine guns. The foot pedals are intact. We'll come over and take a look here inside, get an idea what it looks like inside. There are a lot of other miscellaneous pieces on the ground around the plane, but you can see from the terrain here, we're completely surrounded in jungle. It's only because we know where it is we can come out and photograph it again. Let's do some close-ups here on various odds and ends in the cockpit. The oxygen bottles are gone, the seat's gone, but the rest of the plane is fairly well intact. We'll go back through the jungle about 70 yards away and take a look at one more Zero that's also nearby. Here we have another Japanese Zero, also on the south side of the runway. This one, the area we're looking at, used to have a 20mm cannon. The area has been ripped up a bit, the magazine's gone. The gear's down, there's a little flag that indicates it. The charging tube, all this area is pretty well corroded away. The machine gun is very well corroded. Actually, it's a cannon by definition. But a lot of the other parts of the plane around the canopy area are still intact. The loading mechanism and the discharge mechanism for the machine guns up in the front is all there. Most of the aluminum structure for the canopy is all there. And lots of little goodies in the aircraft, so this one hasn't been bothered that much. Also, we think that the green color paint that you see down in the shadows is
probably the original paint. The red paint here is a primer. That was not the finished paint. The green paint was the finished paint. So this one, because it might have been more in a shadowy jungle section, has survived a little bit better. Fade out. This is one of my favorite planes because it has a really good story that goes with it. As you can see from the plane, it's rather a large plane. This has a section nearby where one of the engines was. As you can see, if you look at it close up, this entire wing structure burnt off. This all had a very serious fire, and part of the wing structure melted down. And if you dig around in the dirt and the leaves here, there's various pieces and parts of what's left of the wing structure that didn't melt off. Now we can swing over here and we can look at the tail. This is all that's remaining of the tail. As you can see, this plane was a tail dragger. But the rest of the fuselage has been burned away or blown up. We have horizontal stabilizer here, which has been torn loose. Looks like it's been ripped off from some explosion. Part of the edge of it's burnt. And what's enjoyable about this plane is a story relating to Amelia Earhart. Now, I've just been told that a man released a book this last year, and he got information from the Freedom of Information Act in 1993, and he took that information, and from his own studies, he found out that there was a plane on Millie in 1945 that he saw from an aerial photograph that he identifies and claims as Amelia Earhart's plane, sitting on the runway at Millie, next to some command bunker or command revetment. And the site that he's pinpointed as being Amelia's plane is very near the spot that we're standing on right now. Now, what we're going to do is come around here to the other side and we'll tell you why his story is incorrect.
Fade out.
This is one of my favorite planes because of a recent story. This plane has some new fame to it. This plane, as you can see here, this is part of a wing structure, and this side here was heavily damaged by fire. The surrounding area all around us has numerous bomb holes, but this end of the wing burnt off. This was the right wing, starboard wing. A lot of the plane has been cannibalized or pieces taken off for aluminum, so somebody's carved up this plane for some sort of a scrap drive. But the reason this plane has some interest relates to the fact of the alleged landing of Amelia Earhart on Millie. Now, if we look over at the tail section, we can see that the tail section of this plane was a tail dragger. And other features of this plane make it similar to the one that Amelia Earhart was flying. Amelia Earhart flew a twin-engine, twin-tailed plane of roughly the size of what this plane, as we develop the story, will turn out to be. Amelia Earhart allegedly crashed her plane here in 1937, but there wasn't any military force here in 1937. That's part of the trick question of all the people who have been on the research on Amelia. In any case, this plane was identified in a recent book as, not this plane, the plane that stood in this area was recently identified as a plane that possibly could have been Amelia Earhart's plane left on the runway during World War II. From an aerial photograph alleged in this book in 1945 or 1946, there was a twin-tailed, twin-engine plane tucked away near some command bunker on the spot that just happens to be approximately where this plane is remaining. Now, we'll bring you over on this side in a second, and we'll show you why we don't think this plane was Amelia Earhart's airplane. This is one of my favorite aircraft now because it has a popular story that goes with it. If we look at this aircraft, much of it's destroyed. This section of the wing, which would be the right side wing, is completely burnt off to ground level. There's various bits and pieces down underneath all this foliage. The wing structure continues on the left side. There's no fuselage left. It's all been burnt away. We estimate the wingspan of this to be approximately in the 80-foot range. Behind me here, we have the tail section. We have horizontal stabilizer, and if we look down below, we have a tail dragger. And the approximate spot on the on Millie was north of the main A runway, very close to behind the command area of the atoll. This plane has some interest because a recent book published using information relating to the Freedom of Information Act claims in this book that this area had a plane that belonged to Amelia Earhart sitting here after the war. The man that wrote this story about Amelia Earhart alleges from a aerial photograph that he saw a twin-tailed, twin-engine plane approximately of her size, and he identifies it from an aerial photograph as the one belonging to Amelia Earhart. Well, Amelia's been looked for the last 57 years, and nobody has found a trace, although we do think that she did crash in Millie. But there's some interesting facts about this plane that we'd like to show you. So we'll fade out here for a second and come around to the other side. Now, if you look at the tail of this aircraft, it doesn't have a rudder in the middle. We have two horizontal stabilizers coming out, one this way and one that way. This is the top of the empennage. There's a little tail section cone that was missing. There was no machine gun fitted in that area. But as you can see, there's no rudder here. Okay? So we know this airplane was a twin-tailed plane, just like Amelia Earhart's plane was a twin-tailed plane. The problem is, in this man's book about Amelia Earhart, he claims the Japanese didn't have any twin-tailed planes in World War II. This is a Japanese twin-tailed plane. We have one of the rudders that was laying on the ground here. This may have come from some section out here that's now missing, or roughly where this breadfruit tree is. But this is a rudder section. It has, looks like a blue undercoat kind of paint with a white paint on top of it, which is sort of unique because we haven't seen that color pattern here. But what makes this plane different is this is only the second one that I think I've seen. I think there's another one on Malolap. But we never had any interest in it until the comments about a twin-tailed plane in Amelia Earhart. And the plane that this man saw on the aerial survey claims to be approximately where this plane is sitting right now. This plane is a predecessor to the Mitsubishi Betty bomber. This plane, I believe the number is a G3M, and it was a twin-tailed Japanese plane. When the Betty bomber went into service, it became a standard design tail, and this plane was primarily turned into a cargo plane, ferrying of troops, material, etc. And usually each atoll had one or two of these for moving supplies, equipment, men, and liaisoning things around the different atolls. This plane was parked on a little turnaround, it looks like, a little cutout off the main runway behind the command area, which is about 400 yards to the south of us. Also, to verify some more features of this plane, this is a more typical Japanese style. In the many of the earlier models, they wanted to be able to move them around or put them on carriers or have them fit into the elevator bays. So this whole wing section, which was approximately 30 feet long, was pinned, 4 pins, 2 top, 2 bottom, and this could be removed, just leaving the wing stub, the section here where we had an engine, landing gear assembly underneath, and then attachment to a fuselage. The 2 engines for this aircraft are in a bomb crater approximately 20 feet to our right. And they're 14-cylinder, 3-bladed, I think they were a Nakajima design. But in any case, the story about Amelia Earhart relating to this plane is, in my opinion, nothing more than a good story. The man has sold his book, but we can tell him that if he wants to come to Millie, we can show them that he's incorrect. And if he wants to find out where she really is, he'll have to come here. Hey, I'm down here. There's about 1,000 holes like this in the neighborhood. Try to do it again? You having a little trouble with that?
No, I got a mosquito bite me right on the fucking face.
Hey, I'm down here. There's about 1,000 holes like this in the neighborhood. Hello out there. This is one of the North dual-purpose guns. I'm inside what's left of its ammo locker. So come on over to this side and we'll show you what it looks like. This is one of the North dual-purpose guns. They're at 12.7 centimeters. As you can see, part of this revetment structure around it's intact. There's some major bomb hits in the area. This is heavily bombed. These were electrically driven, and they had a small generator plant nearby. There's actually an access hole that goes underneath this whole structure so you can grease and lubricate and service part of the swivel mechanism for the gun. Let's move over on the other side and you can get a better look at the operator station. Here we're inside the operator station. There's a number of mechanical controls that raised and lowered, shifted the gun barrels around. A lot of it's still here. A lot of being made of steel is just slowly corroded away and is no longer intact. The gun fired a choice of 3 different shells that we know of. Most of the shells were on the site a number of years ago, but have been cleaned up and disposed of by the demolition people. The shells were a general purpose round, an armor piercing round, and a anti-aircraft round that had a timing switch on it, so they could actually fire the round and it would go off in a certain amount of seconds, or be struck on the end of the pin and detonate if it contacted something. They're in a very interesting site. They're on the north point of the island. You have to remember, it's very hard to visualize, but there are no palm trees here then. The entire end of the island was cut absolutely flat. So let's move over to the front of the gun so we can take a look at the barrels. And then we'll give you a panoramic view of what it looks like to the north now. Here we are on one of the front of the Here we are on the front of the gun. You can notice that this barrel still has its service plug inside. So it's been sealed up for all these years. Another cute little thing. I had to do this before we started the camera so I could find it again. You notice my little pinky over here. There's a bullet hole in the barrel. That deep into the metal. So it got shot at a number of times too. Actually, there's a lot of little dents and chips on the barrel. What we're going to do now is I'm going to walk out and we're going to go look at the other 2 sites.
Mosquito bit me around.
Shit.
No, he bit me on the finger. I couldn't do anything about it. Now what?
We'll talk about this. Then we'll do the panorama. This is the other northern dual-purpose gun. There's been 3 or 4 bomb hits in or around it. It's still in place, but it doesn't look like it was in service anymore. This site used to have numerous shells laying around on the ground, but they've since been removed and detonated. It's interesting to note that part of this area has been reused by humans, either accidentally or on purpose. We have a papaya tree or 2 in the foreground here. And behind us on the ocean side, where we're going to walk to next, about 40 yards behind me, we have another bunker with a little ventilator slit on the top. And the local family has made a copra drying area up on top of it. And it's covered with that blue tarp in the distance. So let's walk on down and look at the reef. It's a very low tide today. We're on the ocean side of the north point of Millie now. This is one of the lower tides you find. It's interesting to look down the reef at low tide. Out in that direction there's a small circle, which is a bomb crater. In the foreground,
we have some of the spikes sticking up that they used to string the barbed wire along for the beach defenses. And to the, almost right in front of us, slightly to the right, there's a real obvious bomb crater down on the reef plain. It probably makes a pretty good swimming pool now. This area offshore is also one of our diving areas. We do scuba diving tours out here also. And it's very, very calm today. It's a long walk, but it's very, very calm. There's a channel to the south of us that we take the boat out of. 3 weeks ago we went out here, we had dolphins swimming by. This is a big turtle area. This is a big shark area. Not any big bad boys, but lots and lots of white tips and gray reefs. It's full of life, full of channels, full of schools of fish. So this is a very exciting place. With the summertime weather coming up, where it's not so windy, the access to these sites, even to snorkelers, is fairly easy. But we'll talk about the diving a little bit more later. See in this picture all the time, Bernie. For those of you who like to walk alone, then walk alone. Kill it. I had a new thought just as I started walking. For those of you who like to walk on white sandy beaches, with nobody else around, you won't be able to match this one. If you get tired of looking at the war relics, we have skin diving, snorkeling, scuba diving, sport fishing, all available. As you look down this beach, you can see about almost 4 miles of white sand. And with only 400 people residing on Millie, you won't bump into very many people when you're visiting here. Well, we're at the end of the island and the end of the tape. I want to thank everybody that's helped us make this, and I hope we see you here soon. Thank you very much. Kill it, Bernie.
Yeah.
I just stuttered again. Well, we're at the end of the island and the end of our tape. I want to thank everybody that's helped us, and we hope to be seeing you soon. Look at this beach, man. No other footprints. Just me. This is the site of the second P39. We call this the northern P39. And actually, although the site had been discovered by some Marshallese, some older Marshallese years and years ago, they never knew until a few weeks ago that this was actually an American aircraft in the jungle of Millie, and not a Japanese one. As we look down the wing, this is what's left of part of the wing structure. It's easy to tell it's American because it has numerous American bits of English and information on it. The arm, disarm, arm safe switch for the bomb is easily to read. Bernie, let's start this whole thing over. I'm babbling. Gives you practice there. This is the site of the second P39 on Millie Atoll. This is on the north side of the runway, and though it had been here and been known by some of the older Marshallese for many, many years, they had presumed that this was a Japanese aircraft. And since the wreckage is so well destroyed and burned, as you can look down part of this wing spar area, you can see where it's had a lot of heat. All this edge is feathered over. And the plane obviously ran into the ground, crashed into the ground at a very high rate of speed. And all that remains are little bits and pieces of it over about a 150-foot area. We found the tail section about 150 yards away, and we presume from what we've seen here that the aircraft had its tail shot off by anti-aircraft fire and came crashing into the ground, probably about 50 yards to our right, and the plane cartwheeled over and dumped pieces and bits of plane and the main engine into the ground, and then the entire site burned. This Allison engine identifies it fairly easily as a P39. It was the only one used in this theater of the war. This is a drive shaft, and if we look closely, this engine has been melted, and it's also upside down, so you can actually look at the bottom of the crankcase and then from one end here see into the cylinders. In the foreground we have part of a landing gear assembly, and this edge of the wingtip that if we turn it up, you can still see part of the Army Air Corps insignia with the original, at that time, blue paint. We also think this is a site where the Japanese may have had their own sort of a kitchen area. It's behind one of the revetments off the runway, so the Japanese may have used this as sort of an R&R place because the revetments gave them some shielding against any bomb attacks. Now we'll move over and we'll go take a look at where the propeller came down. This is a spinner and propeller assembly. As you can see, it came into the ground, probably rotating. This blade's been well bent over. Also, what makes this unique for this aircraft is it has a hollow steel blade, and it's partially rusted away, so you can actually look down into the propeller blade. This blade on this side looks like it was either rusted off or sheared off, but it's no longer here. But the one on the bottom side, from what we can gather, is still in the ground. We've looked for some ID numbers on all of this, but some of the areas that typically we would find it matching with the other P39, those areas on this aircraft are missing or have been burnt off. So we have no identifying numbers on this aircraft at this point. As kill me. I started too quick, I think. Did I start too quick? As a sad conclusion to the P39 story, on our last expedition here, when we found this plane and identified it as a P39, we also found the bones of the pilot lying on the ground nearby. The bones were smashed into his parachute, and the surrounding area was, from all indications, was completely burnt off. The bones were hidden under the jungle. It was just a matter of fortune that I could see them. So we requested the local government here to collect the bones and bury them at this site, so that if the authorities want to come down and dig the entire site up and look for all the remains, at least some of them have been collected and put back in the ground. So we put a simple marker up and just simply called it Unknown Pilot, Northern P39, U.S. Army Air Corps, 1943. As a sad conclusion to this bit of history, when we located the P39 here, we also found the remains of the pilot nearby. So we requested the authorities permission to collect the bones that were on the surface and bury them here, so they wouldn't be lost. We presume there's other remains, other bits of remains and artifacts in the ground, but we didn't want to dig it up. We wanted to let the authorities come search the entire site if they felt that was necessary. We think it's pretty easy to identify this pilot, and we also feel that this pilot and his compatriot in the other P39 were not the Sunday bombers. Nice, and I've almost got what I want to say, but I'm not quite there. As a sad conclusion to the P39 story, when we were looking through the site the last time, when it was identified as a P39 and not a Japanese aircraft, when we were looking through all these objects on the ground, we also found the remains of the pilot. So with the local authorities' permission, we collected the bones off the ground, as the pilot was never buried, and reburied them in a sealed container here in the ground, and collected some of the artifacts nearby and put them here just to mark the site. We believe that the P-39 pilots, both the North or the South pilots, weren't the Sunday bomber that came from Majuro, as that plane wasn't based in Majuro. But we feel that there is still a story concerning the Sunday bomber, but the P-39 pilots are not part of that story. In part of our search for a mysterious pilot that's sort of been nicknamed the Sunday Bomber, we began looking around Millie for an American aircraft. This plane was rumored to be in the jungle somewhere south of the main runway. So we found it. This was known to the locals for many, many, many years. And the aircraft you're looking at right now is a P39 Airacobra. This plane crash landed with wheels up. You can see the wheels up underneath the wing. It clipped off this right wing. The engine wasn't running. The propeller blades are undamaged from turning. One of the lower blades was bent back on landing, and the fuselage in the front was tweaked a little bit to the left. The Sunday bomber allegedly flew from Majuro and came down to Millie every Sunday and shot up the runway, making low-level passes. The story was that he eventually started doing touch and goes on the runway, and the Japanese got rather angry with this and dug a trench across the runway, which caught him in the trench and destroyed his plane. So there's many endings led to this alleged Sunday bomber, but we don't think this plane really was a Sunday bomber. This plane belonged to the U.S. Army Air Corps and wasn't based in Majuro. And they flew down, these planes primarily flew out of Tarawa in the Gilberts, and came up, and they were doing the softening up raids on the Marshall Islands all around. Kill it, Bernie. I'm babbling. I know, I can get better the second one. And you probably know what to look at now. In one of our searches, we've been looking for a mysterious pilot that's been nicknamed the Sunday Bomber. He was supposed to fly out of Millie. Hope we don't run out of battery before we run out of... In search of one of the rumors we've heard for years and years is a story about an American pilot called the Sunday Bomber. He was supposed to fly out of Majuro and fly down to Millie on Sundays and strafe the bypassed Japanese on Millie, and basically became very rude to the point where he's doing touch and goes on the runway. And I hate these days. Kill me. I'm getting there. As part of our searching, we've been looking for a mysterious pilot, American pilot, that they called the Sunday Bomber. And he would fly from Majuro down to Millie and strafe the bypassed Japanese defenders. The story goes that eventually he'd do touch and goes on the runway, and the Japanese, getting very angry with this, dug a trench across the runway and hid it, and the next Sunday he came down, he crashed on the runway where the Japanese killed him. We knew of this aircraft in the jungle for many, many years, and hadn't really made any connection between this and the Sunday Bomber story. So we decided to come look at this and be detectives and determine whether this plane could actually be the Sunday Bomber. This plane is a P39 Airacobra, which is a U.S. Army Air Corps plane at the time, and they were primarily flown out of Tarawa and not Majuro. So first off, we don't believe that this was actually the Sunday Bomber. This plane also came in, crash landed with its gear up, and his engine was turned off because the propeller blades only have one blade bent back. And the indication from the fuselage was as he ground along and basically dented his fuselage slightly to the left. The plane either burnt after crash landing, because we have indications all across the top of the original aluminum valve covers here that this actually melted down. The tail section looks like it was actually melted off and disappeared. But most of the rest of the plane is here. This is the very, very end of the tail. This is a light on his tail. This plane is also very easy to identify because of this Allison engine sitting in the middle of it. And it had a drive shaft that went underneath the pilot and attached to the propeller. And they had a large 37mm cannon that was mounted through the nose spinner, and also 50 calibers on the wings. The story goes that this pilot, when he crashed, was actually dead on the ground, that he was dead inside of his cockpit, and that the Japanese took him out of the plane and buried him nearby. In part of our continuing to look over the history of this Sunday Bomber, we found a second P39 Airacobra that many of the locals had thought was a Japanese aircraft, and because the aircraft is in so many smaller pieces, no one knew it was the second P39 until a few weeks ago. So when we leave this site, we're going to go to the north side of the runway and take a look at that P39. You probably wonder what you're looking at, but we have a zero here in the jungle. The engine is actually straight ahead of you and to the left, and you won't be able to see it. You can look and look, and you might be able to see some of the exhaust ring. But as you come back towards my voice, which is on your right, we have a zero wing, the left wing, down here at ground level. And the reason we want to show you this one, it's the last one we'll show you. This zero wingtip isn't a folding wingtip. This makes this plane generally older than the other zeros that are on Millie and throughout the rest of the Marshall Islands. what makes this unique is there's been many, many stories that some of the Zero aircraft and some of the valves that are on the Marshall Islands were involved in the Pearl Harbor attack. So through past, different people and museums and such have sought after different aircraft in the Marshalls, hoping and presuming they could find one that was involved in the Pearl Harbor attack and put into a museum somewhere. This aircraft is very deteriorated. This left wing is the best part of the plane. There is no fuselage or empennage, and part of the right wing is off into the jungle, buried under the undergrowth, approximately 30 or 40 feet away. The only thing that's completely unique, it's just very simply, this wingtip didn't fold up. Hi, Mom. We're on Millie. This is our hotel master, Ellison Daniel. He will smile at the camera.
Thank you very much.
This is what our little hotel room looks like.
Okay, I come for this.
Okay. We're back to me again, are we? We're right on the beach. Nice and cool and no mosquitoes. This way. There you go. I have to put a big, big knob on that thing. Bye-bye. We wanted to show you our accommodations. It's a simple room, but it's quite nice. We have a little desk, a place to work. Also, we take our meals in here usually, or we sit outside.
This is our little bedroom area. It looks like we're inside one big handicraft. It is locally made. The only thing that's imported is a plywood for the floors. They have simple foam mattresses, but it's very airy. We don't have a problem with mosquitoes or getting hot. Actually, when the wind blows at night, sometimes you can get too cold. And right outside our window, we have the beach. We wanted to give you a look at what it looks like behind the little hotel and down the beach. This is the beach down towards downtown. Population of about 300 people. This extends for about another mile and a half down the beach to the official end of Millie. And another small island starts and they continue all the way around the atoll. Sweep around the beach, and we'll come back around and show you our little tourist cottages. There's 3 usable units, one's for storage. So right now they can handle about 6 people. There's a private but communal shower and toilet area behind. They're working on more, so maybe when you get here, there'll be even more things. We believe this is the Japanese jail. We also think this is where they kept the 5 aircrew from the B-24, sorry, B-25. I don't like that, Bernie. Try again. Practice, practice. I thought 5 minutes at 5. We believe this is a Japanese jail room. They also used it to keep the aircrew from the American B-25 that crashed in the lagoon. And their 5 aircrew paddled ashore. They were later executed here on Millie. None of these windows had any inner windows. All they had was bars. There's no indication they had any sort of a blast door or other covering door. So we think this was just basically a big open room. It did take one bomb hit though. It's about a 12-inch thick roof.
Talk a little louder.
Okay. Hello in California. I hope you can hear me from way, way over here. We're in Millie right now. This is my little picnic site all around us. Behind the cameraman is where we've already cleared. But I'm thinking of building a little touristy house up on top of this mound. It used to be an anti-aircraft site during the war. And the trench in between was like an anti-tank trap or a place for the men to hide during the bombing. And it's about another 80 or 90 yards to the ocean side on the west side of the island. It's sort of unique because I have my own personal tail of a Betty bomber right in my backyard. This is another Betty bomber. There are two Betty bombers parked on this turnaround here. Behind the cameraman is a turnaround at the end of the A runway. There's two of them parked here, and the Americans came and bombed them both on the runway. The entire fuselage and wing sections burned on the runway, leaving just the tails. And to my left, off in the jungle, there's part of the very nose of the airplane. The two engines are actually over here in the jungle somewhere, and little bits and pieces. But after the bombing of the two aircraft, they simply pushed them off the edge of the turnaround and into this tank trap area at the edge of the runway. It's about another 100 yards to the oceanside beach behind us. This is the back of the same tail section. You can see the old plexiglass housing. They used to have a man in the back of the plane with a 20mm cannon. All the 20mm cannon items are removed. So basically, we just have the very tail end of the plane. All the plexiglass has been broken out or burned. And we have another one similar to this, about 50 yards to the south of us. This also has a number 602. This is a back view of the same Betty bomber tail. It has either bullet hole or shrapnel wounds. This entire section here had plexiglass, and they had an airman inside that could swivel with foot pedals and hand controls 20mm cannon. Underneath the wing, there's a great number of Japanese caricatures, but the only thing that we can read, it says number 602. So that might indicate what squadron this aircraft was in. This is the nose of the same Betty bomber. This is the bottom section of the nose. As you look across this really rough edge, it's easy to tell that it's been burnt off. All the edges are feathered and melted down. This section sort of collapsed on itself. The one side and top are in pretty good shape on the side that you can't see here from the camera. Once you walk around to the front, this very front section of the nose is still in place. It's corroded and fallen out, but it still looked like it went just about like that.
but all the glass or plexiglass is missing.
This is the beach on the west side of Millie. This is near the channel. There's a small boat channel here that was blasted in the reef. This is what we use for beach dives or taking the boat in and out. You're looking at a fairly low tide right now. I can sweep around the other side. You can also look out at an area that we'd like to go sport fishing at. There seems to be a shelf in the ocean on this side and deep on the right side, and when the currents converge we get a lot of fish in that area. Wahoo, yellowfin tuna, skipjack tuna, marlin. Hello again, California. It's really hot today, and I'm sorry I've got to wear the sunglasses. If I don't wear the sunglasses, I can't even see out here. It's pretty low tide. We're on the west side of the island near Ellison's place. There's a little channel here that you blasted a few years ago, and that's what we use to go diving or take the boat in and out. The fishing out here is fantastic because it's a shallower extension of the island on the left side and deep on the right, so when the currents meet, it does something with the nutrients, and we get a lot of fish out there. So years ago when I was an unknown fisherman in the family, now I've probably caught more fish than all the family put together. But if you look back up the beach, it looks like a nice pretty beach, lots of trees, but even in the foreground, when you catch that at the base of what we haven't decided if that's a bunker or a water tank. Up underneath the trees there you can see some of the cement work. So right now this is a pretty low tide. It only gets about another foot lower than this. And at high tide this evening, when we'll be back in Majuro, I'll be almost underwater. Main runway. They call it Runway A, and they had another runway that intersected it this direction called Runway C. And if you look at the ground, this nice green circle that I'm walking around, this used to be a bomb crater hole that some pilot planted on the intersections of the A and the C runways. There's many, many more along the runway, but this is the most obvious, easy to see. Towards the east end is a prevailing wind, and that's the shore that most of the people live on. We're on the edge of the main runway at Millie. To give you a little history lesson of the airbase here, the Navy built the airbase here really starting after the outbreak of hostilities in 1941. So in 1942, about February, they started to build the airbase. The airbase was under Navy construction, and they had about 2,500 men that built the base. After the time around Guadalcanal, the Japanese realized that the marshals were too far out on the perimeter and they couldn't hold them. So as part of their defense, they sent another 2,600 men who were Army to join the garrison here to defend the base against an American invasion. Well, they had a number of problems. First of all, mixing Army and Navy was very difficult, and the base was constructed for only 2,500 people, and they had 5,100 people on the base all of a sudden. Still, they survived until the heavy bombing started, and once the base started to get bombed, basically all the foliage that you see around you here, there was hardly a tree standing over 8 feet tall on the entire island. So you had 3 square miles of land that had hardly a jungle section left. So the Japanese were forced to dig into the ground, and it doesn't take much digging here to get down to the water table. So they had very primitive living quarters and conditions. It was very difficult to hide from the bombing raids, and over a period of time, totaling almost 18 months, the Japanese were cut off from any sort of resupply. So by the end of the hostilities, the Japanese were actually trying to surrender shortly before the end of the war. At that time, they were losing 23 men a day to starvation, and the garrison had gone from its peak of 5,100 men to about 2,500 men, 1,600 of which did die of starvation, another 900 or so from the air raids and disease and sickness and other related accidents, because they were using a lot of the bombs to make explosive fishing, trying to catch fish. So the base was completely isolated, and eventually it did surrender on August 21st, and the Americans landed here on August 28, 1945, and took the remaining of the garrison off. Now behind you, we'll look down the main runway. This is called the A runway, and we'll be looking out to the west, and that'll be where we're walking to look next. Here comes our ride.